Welcome to the Birth Lounge Podcast, an empowering space for expecting and new parents to hear candid conversations with experts, support your mental health, and learn the tips and tricks that thousands of parents have used to craft their ideal birth. We will answer all of your questions, the scary ones and the weird ones, to help calm your fears and feel confident going into your birth. I'm going to help you redefine what birth and motherhood looks like and how to embrace your journey. I've intentionally crafted a list of experts to help you navigate pregnancy, explore your birth options, and plan for postpartum so that it can be a time of soaking in your tiny human. We're going to go there on all the hard topics so that you can dive deep into finding your confidence and freeing yourself from fears around birth. With over 10 years of experience in family education and a master's degree in human development and family studies, I created this podcast as a way to share the resources parents need to make educated and informed decisions about their care in pregnancy and childbirth. This is a birth community driven by evidence-based information and research in hopes to help you explore your options, understand your rights, and know what choices you have along the way when it comes to birth and beyond. I'm your host, HeHe. Now let's get to the good stuff. Jess, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I love about sharing this podcast, of course, I love the evidence-based stuff and I love interviewing professionals and I love interviewing like academics, right? But one of my favorite things ever is to share guest birth stories that are in real life, that are out in the wild, that are true birth stories, not hypotheticals like we get in the research-based episodes. And so today, I'm so stoked to dive into your water birth. We've never had a water birth story on. Yeah, no, we never have. Not for any reason except it just hasn't crossed my path as someone sharing, and you jumped in my DMs and told me about your water birth, and I said, oh my gosh, you have to share this. My people need to know about it. And so thank you. Thanks for being here today. I'm really excited to dive into this. But before we do dive into water birth and your experience of that, I think it might be helpful for us to first understand what led you to that. So this is your fifth baby that you have your water birth with. So what were your other four births leading up to that? And how'd you get to the decision of water birth?
So my first one, my girl, she having your first baby, you're not sure what to expect. And it was actually a really challenging birth because I went into labor on a Tuesday and didn't give birth till Thursday.
Wow.
And so I was I was getting a lot of heavy contractions really quickly, but my water did not break. For none of my children did it break. They always had
Wow.
to break my water. So I remember going into the hospital and then I would go all the time and they would send me home all the time and send me home. And then finally they gave me like morphine and just for the pain. And when I woke up, I think my body was relaxed enough where I could have this baby. And they were a little scared. Oh, I don't know if you'll be able to push because then they wanted to give me, I did get an epidural. And they were like, are you sure you're gonna be able? I was like, yes, trust me.
Trust
So I
me.
guess I didn't really know I just knew I was in a lot of pain. And so I had that baby. I had a midwife for all of my children. And I absolutely knew that I wanted a midwife for all my children because just of the care that they gave me all through my pregnancy. So for Chelsea, I had that was like a longer birth and I tore and it was like the healing process being a new young mom. My other two were also my other ones after that, Jay and Aaron were also in the hospital and they were a little bit easier. I think your first one takes really long. They always say your second, your third, they go a little bit faster. And so that's what happened for those two. It was in the hospital with a midwife. I think I knew a little bit more about having babies. I took care of myself. I didn't gain as much weight. It went a lot smoother. Breastfeeding, all those things. It was really wonderful being in a hospital with my midwife. I think the challenge came more along the lines on my fourth child. I was pregnant and I got diagnosed with trisomy 18. And so I still had a midwife. She was phenomenal, but he was breech. And so in that breach, they tried to do the turning. And once that happened, it had to go into an emergency C-section because a lot of the levels dropped. So I had an emergency C-section, which was not planned emergency and very challenging. And then the healing process. And then after that, but then going into my last baby, which was almost like that happened years after that. I want to say about 12 years after. It was like, surprise. I knew that I really wanted a water birth. It was something throughout my life I always wanted, but in New York, I couldn't find one that I was looking for, a midwife that would have water birth. So I knew that he was our last one, and I was very determined to have a water birth. So I found a midwife that would do a water birth after having a cesarean, which a lot of times you don't find that. So I found one that would do, and they cared for me really great. And so we ended up having a water birth for our last one. And for the previous ones, they were all hospitals. My water did not break for any of those. They always had to break my water, but for my water birth, everything shifted and everything changed. I remember my midwives going into labor, and I called her that early morning of my water birth, knowing that, and my water had broken. It was the first time experiencing that. And it was like, I guess all the things that I wanted to happen happened with my last birth, because I always wanted my water to break on its own. I didn't want to get induced. I didn't want an epidural. I didn't want to do all the things I had done before. And I just really wanted a natural just birth as best as I could. And I woke up, my water broke. It was like this gush of water, which I don't know, for me, it was exciting because it never happened for kids before. And I went there, and it was interesting because my midwife, she was so amazing. She was very old school. She was an old school midwife. And I told her specifically that I did not want to get induced, but I had a tendency for all of my births to have contractions, but not really open up. And so she was like, all right, do you trust me? And I was like, yeah. And she stripped my membrane. She did all those things. But she was like, all right, I'm going to give you a little concoction here. And she said, I'm going to give you some cod liver oil. She says, I'm going to give you some orange juice. And she says, I'm going to give you a little bit of vodka. And I was like, and she's like, a little shot. And I was like, really? And she says, the cod liver oil is going to bring on your contractions, and you're just going to go. It's going to clean you out. She says, the orange juice is to mask the taste, and the little bit of the shot is to help you with the pain. She was an old school midwife. I trusted her. And as soon as she did that, I went to the bathroom. I went into labor very quickly. And before you know it, I was in the car, because we were at the midwives had just a serene place that I would go to. Had the rocking chair, I had my bouncy ball, I was doing all the great things. She kept monitoring me, and she was like, all right, we're ready to go. I did that, I got cleaned out, and we were on our way to the birthing center. And I will not lie, I will tell you that I don't think I was prepared for all the ones before. I had an epidural, and this one I was like, I want everything natural, and I did not have one. And on the car there, I'm like, I think I need an epidural. I'm like screaming to the top of my lungs, and my husband's driving so fast with our Prius. And we get there, and they check me, and I was just, my centimeters, I think I was about 7 centimeters already. And she was like, it's too late. You can't have an epidural. You're ready to go. You're ready to get into the tub. And I'm like, I'm ready. And it was so amazing. It was so amazing. I tell everyone, if I could go back and do them all again, I would do it again. If I were going to have any more babies back then, I would have done that, because we got into the tub. The water was warm. My husband was there. I had a midwife. She had her assistant there. And it just, my body felt lighter. The weight of my body wasn't weighing me down. So like, from comparison to my births beforehand, where they did let me go walk up around the room, but at a certain point they put the monitors on you and you're in the bed and you just feel everything. Whereas in the water, it's almost like you're floating. So it helps with the pain, it helps with the contractions, and it helps for you to just process and visualize your birth. And she was navigating that with me. And she would tell me exactly what was happening in all those moments. And I just remember feeling just the kind of sereneness of it and the peace of it in the water. And although the pain was there from the contractions, it wasn't as much. And I felt, wow, this is like what I was meant to do and how I was meant to do it. And so she would tell me, okay, and she would just go down because it's a different, your body's in a different position, right? So like in the bed, you're laying back and you're in the stirrups, whereas in the water birth, you're sitting almost and she's there. And at one point she would tell me to turn over, she would check me, then she'd have me turn back around and she'd check me. And all the while, like she's on the outside kind of checking me and navigating that while I'm having my contractions. And so it was a very beautiful experience. And she would just know when to tell me when to push. And before you knew it, baby boy was up and out. And it was just amazing. It was amazing for him to come through the water like that and just, oh, I just think about it and it makes me so happy.
Oh my gosh, I'm smiling ear to ear. It is just so I can't believe that not only did you go from the hospital on your fifth baby to a birth center and have this amazing experience, but you did it as a VBAC. I imagine that was really hard because it was probably during a time that the saying once a cesarean, always a cesarean was the belief. And I say that because even now, that is still a widely spread belief, even though it's not true. We know that VBACs are an option for most people, and up to 80% of VBACs are typically successful. So I'm wondering what that path looked like to finding a provider that was okay with you being a VBAC, and in addition to wanting your water birth.
Yeah, I think the cards were stacked against me in that sense. I had a VBAC and then I was 41.
Yeah.
So they consider that to be like, oh, that's you're older, it's we want to check you all the time. But I found a midwife that just heard my heart for the way I wanted my birth. And she was all for it. And it was really a great experience because I trusted her with my process of what I wanted for my birth and she trusted me. And so throughout that time, it's cool because what they had was right next door. They had a chiropractor. And so she would go and she would tell me like when I was out of alignment or my pelvis or things like that. And she would send me right over. And so I was getting adjustments before my delivery, all those things. I was just doing all the things that she had me do. And it just worked. And it made it a lot easier because I didn't know this. I had a tilted pelvis. It would, so she said inverted. So there was a lot of things that doctor probably wouldn't have agreed to, but she knew enough and she had done enough of them that she was like, okay, get your adjustments. I'm always going to check you. And it wasn't like I was getting sonograms to see that everything was okay. It was just the measurement and just her skill as a midwife was really amazing. And it was like the midwives, and they were able to do it brilliantly.
Does having this experience at the birth center and being able to see your body go into labor on its own and release your bag of waters on its own, does it make you question whether the hospital and the hospital staff maybe intervene too much or too fast in your other births?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do. Because I remember in one of my births where my midwife had stepped out, she had to go do something, and the doctor came in and he wanted to cut me. And she was like, and she came back in. Thankfully, she came back in. She was like,
Mhm.
nope, she's okay. She says, I'll massage it to help her. But like for her talking to me, she was like, if they cut you, it'll be a harder healing process. Whereas if you tear, it will naturally heal a little bit easier. And so she walked me through that process, even in the hospital. It was a different midwife. So for me, I always felt like in my births, I wanted to go to a midwife. And even though I had a doctor available to me, I trusted the guidance of my midwife and how she was guiding my birth because we had discussed before what I did and did not want to do. And I did see that doctors were very quick to either cut me or to do certain things, whereas she would intervene and say, no, let's try this first. Let's try that. Let me just go in and tear the membranes a little bit. Let me massage her a little bit. All the things that can happen.
Yeah, midwifery care I think is so superior to OB care as long as you are a low risk person and don't need that higher kind of surgical skill that obstetricians have when thinking about birth. Okay, is there anything else that you did in terms of prepping for your VBAC and or preparing yourself for a water birth?
I definitely watched videos. I seen the videos that you share in different things, and those were all really helpful. Like for me, when I was prepping to watch what to expect, a lot of conversation, a lot of removing a lot of that fear, because I did come from previously, my delivery was actually an emergency C-section. So there was a lot of hurriedness about it, a lot of fear, and a lot of things that happened in that cesarean, that going into this one, I had to focus more on what I knew I wanted out of a birth, as opposed to the fear of what could happen or the negative part of it, if that makes sense. So I just knew to focus on one thing as opposed to the other. I'm really prepping of husband was there and the music that we had and the things that I was going to focus on and the peace that I carried and just all those things that I did and just praying into that moment of what I wanted for a birth definitely helped me shift gears in like my heart, my mindset, and all the things that I wanted to do for that birth, as opposed to all the things that couldn't go wrong, being a high risk because of my age or higher risk because I had a cesarean previously. All those things were stacked against me, but working with someone that I trusted, preparing my heart and my mind for what I was doing, and then just knowing that it was going to be great. That's what, for me, it wasn't another option in that sense.
That dedication I always find is so key when it comes to especially VBACs, but going unmedicated or facing a hospital system that's really oppositional to the things that you want and not supportive of your birth goals. So I'm so glad to hear you say that. I have a question about when your baby actually came out into the water. When I post videos of people having water births, it's always a question of like, how does your baby breathe? When you and I know that your baby's breathing through their umbilical cord, like they won't take their first breath until their face hits the air. But what did you do to prepare yourself for that moment? And when your baby comes out and they're in the water and you're staring down like, "Oh my God, I did this." What do you do? What are you feeling in that moment?
Euphoria is the word
Yeah.
I can use for it. It's literally the way it's meant to happen in that
Yeah.
sense. For me, I know different people feel differently, but for me, my birth story, that was the one I wanted. So as he's coming out and the years in waiting for him and then wanting that birth, it was like euphoria because remember, we had a son that passed away from trisomy. We waited a long time. Then we have this happen. And just for him to come out, it was just like my body did this thing in the water and he just comes up on my chest and then immediately able to nurse. It was just like, again, I'm just, and the moment is like all the pain, everything goes away like in the snap of a finger, because it's that moment where you're giving that last push and you realize this is it. Everything else doesn't matter. It's this last push in the water. And I thought it was interesting because visually, when you're giving birth at a hospital, you don't see really anything that's happening. For my first one, they did ask me if I wanted a mirror, and I was like, no, thank you. I was like, no, thank you. I don't think I want a mirror. But you're laying down and you don't really see. Whereas for my water birth, I'm sitting up and I see the water turn red because the blood, everything comes out. And I see everything come out and he comes out. So it's a different visual picture that you get, but it's almost like my body is doing this thing that I get to be up with it and see it. So it was very cool to see it visually from as opposed to a birth in a hospital where all of that happens on the table and you don't see the other side of it except for the people that are on the other side of it. Whereas, and my husband on all the others, like for my first birth, my husband was there, all these things, and he cut the umbilical cord on our, I want to say our third. He was there. He literally delivered that baby. My midwife was amazing. She was like, so you ready to deliver this baby? And he's like, all right, do I get it? He's no, that's all in the movies. Just catch it. And he's what? So from that one to the water birth where he was on the side navigating and being more of a coach for me as opposed to delivering the baby. It was really cool.
Okay, what was your midwife doing during that time? So you just described what you see your providers in a hospital doing. What did you see with your water birth?
She was like a great coach. She was coaching me. She was coaching my husband because at one point my husband tried to pull out a phone to videotape and she yelled at him. She's like, "We got all that on video." Like they put it on a video for me. They put it
Wow.
in music and they sent it to me. So like they made sure they did all of that so I didn't have to worry about it.
Wow.
So they were amazing. So she would coach me as to what's going to happen next. The baby's crowning. It's almost here. You've got one more push. Okay, maybe turn over. Let's get on your knees. To because if I was in too much pain, okay, change your positions. Get on your knees. Okay, squat. She was doing all those things to help me through the process, to work through it and guiding me. And she's on the outside of the tub, kind of leaning in and just with her arms in there, which I think is amazing because I'm sure that's hard on backs. Yeah, I
Sure.
would assume. But just her coaching me like a really great coach does. And she was coaching me and coaching Rick along that process on what that looks like.
And she didn't reach down and grab your baby or pull them out of you. You reached down and grabbed your
She
own
she
baby and
would
just,
tell me, yeah, she was like, okay, put your hands down and now hold him. And then he's coming up. And she would like literally telling me what to do through
oh,
the process. And her hands are in there to be like that safety net for
totally.
everything else. But she would be like, okay, now touch his head. Okay, he's there. Okay, now you feel his shoulder. Okay, he's coming out and like hold him and like bring him up. So she was there to coach me through that process and to be there in case I needed anything.
Oh my gosh, that is so dreamy. I think that is probably the birth that everyone
Mhm.
or most people desire. A very uninterrupted but really well supported experience, something that no one else is inserting themselves, but they have that expert support right there on the sidelines, giving them the guidance. And if anything goes wrong, they're in good hands, right? And it sounds like your partner was really, really involved, just welcomed into the space and really treated as an equal part of that team, which can sometimes be lost in the hospital system as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when you have a clear vision and to the best of your ability, it can come to pass because I know there's always things that happen. Like my emergency C-section wasn't part of my birthing plan, right?
Sure.
So, to the best of your ability, when it can happen for the safety of the mom and the baby, to me, I think it's the best experience to navigate for those that want that natural experience and are looking for it because you're so close to the way your body creates that life and your baby coming into the world in that water, coming out of the water. And I think that's why I did it the most. I had heard so many stories of your baby's in that womb for 9 months in that sack with water all the way around it, amniotic sac. And so they're going from water to water and coming out. And that's the level, there's no stress in that sense for the baby. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be at least the least amount of stress as possible for me and for him without any kind of medications or anything like that. So they were very clear on what I wanted before my birth, during my birth, and after my birth. Very clear what I did not want and what I did want.
That communication is key. It's something I talk about all the time. It's just like having clear expectations. And also, it does take finding the right provider, right? And you had this added layer of finding a provider that not only was going to honor what you wanted and actually do that, but also being trained in VBAC and comfortable with you having a VBAC in a birth center. And next question is, what was it like pushing in the water? I think a lot of people either know what it's like to push on a hospital bed or what it's like to push in the hospital setting. What was it like pushing in water?
So I guess it's hard to describe it. So I love to soak in a bathtub because when you're
Yeah.
in a bathtub, you're like just you feel light and airy, especially as the tub fills up, you get lighter, right? So when you're on a table, again, you feel like the weight of your body, you feel the pressure of your body. There's
Mm.
nothing elevating you or holding you. Whereas when you're in the water itself, almost is holding you. if that makes sense. So you're
Yeah.
lighter. And so when you're pushing, but there's this water pressure around you that's actually making it easier. I don't know how to give it words, as like when you're on the table, you're pushing and there's the space in the room. But when you're in the water, that space is filled with water that's like warm and makes your body feel at ease. When you're on a table, you don't have, imagine just soaking in a tub, right? So you're soaking in okay, if you're laying on the bed, you feel the weight of your body on the bed, but you're relaxed on your bed and it's good. But when you're soaking in a tub, your body's like lighter and it feels different and you can enjoy it. You just relax more. So it's the same thing like when you're birthing on a table, you're birthing that baby, you're doing what you got to do and you're pushing and it's painful and it's hard. And when you're tub, you're birthing that baby, there's still pain, but it's the environment, the soakingness of it makes your body feel lighter. So it makes it easier, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
It does make sense. It's like the compression from the water pressure that you are in actually gives your body some relief. And it almost makes your contractions more efficient, not in the sense of like you're working harder or better, but just in the sense of your body is better supported. So you're able to have more targeted, intentional pushes with your contractions.
That's perfect. That's the way to perfectly explain it. It's like that compression, and then it's aiding you in doing that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. We don't often see facility-based water births. We do see them at home births and they're wonderful. I think facility-based water births are probably so like birth centers and hospitals are probably a little bit harder to come by, but that is amazing. Okay, and then my next question about pushing is you had experience with pushing in that supine position on your back. How did it feel to finally be upright, to have control over your body, to not have the epidural and really be in total control of those body mechanics and being able to feel those bodily urges, the natural ones?
I loved being able to move my position and not being in one position. Like I loved when I was able to get on my knees and turn over. I loved when I was able to get on all fours. It was just all the things that I needed to do to relieve myself in certain moments of pain and pressure, and to move helped, as opposed helped to deal with the pain and the contractions and the pushing, as opposed to being in one position and almost like having to take it, right? You have to take it because you got to do what you got to do. And here I was able to relieve it sometimes. Okay, I'm going to get on my knees. Okay, I'm going to get on all fours. Okay, I'm going to lay back. Okay. So all those things was like moving around and allowing my body to, and my mind to work with my body.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. And this being your first birth that you didn't have an epidural, you knew that going in, but you still had mentioned, like, wow, I was unprepared for that experience. What do you wish you had done, or what do you wish you had prepared for if people out there are birthing at a birth center and having their first unmedicated experience, or I guess anywhere and just having their unmedicated experience, what do you advise them to look into, know about this, understand this?
It's hard to prepare for pain, but you can. Like for me, I think maybe understanding, watching videos, I think I watched them more for the what to expect in a birthing process, as opposed to thinking about, I had the idea in my head of no medication, no induction, no epidural, because I was just anti that in my head for this experience, but also preparing myself to saying, if I need it, it's okay. Because had I needed that, I would not have liked to come out of there disappointed. Right. So to understand, this is what I want from my birth, this is the things, but I'm okay if this happens just in case. That's the safe thing for me, and not come out disappointed, but also prepare for, okay, I'm going no medication. I've had previously 4 of them that had medication. I have to understand the level of pain and the intensity from this time to this time. I would have loved to prepare a little bit more of strategies to cope with that, especially as I'm in the car grabbing the back of the seat for dear life. I think the better route would have been to prepare for some techniques to have that on my way to the hospital and to deal with the pain, as opposed to thinking, oh, I could do this. I think I should have better prepared.
Yeah. What was it like feeling the fetal ejection reflex for the first time unmedicated?
I thought immediately as it would increase, I was like, oh, I need somebody to relieve me of this pain immediately,
Oh.
like right now. And again, I think it's because I previously had that relief for all those other times. So I
Mm-hmm.
had nothing to compare it to other than when I got paid, they relieved it.
Mm-hmm.
So here I'm like, oh, I thought I could do this. I can't. So I was actually really happy after the fact because I think I would have been disappointed in myself if I'm going to be honest. I'm really happy that by the time I got there, I was too far along for it. And whether it was the little concoction that made me go or whatever it was, I was very happy that I was too far along to get it because I did have the full experience. And I
Yeah.
think that's priceless for me. I will have that in my memory forever because the pain wasn't as long. It was a pretty quick labor. It wasn't very long and intense. It's just that my quick go-to is that, oh my gosh, I had 4 babies before this. When I'm in this level of pain, I just go to epidural. And this was like, no, you can do this. This is the way your body was meant to do this. Get in the water. And that's what she did. She was like, you're too far along. And she gave me the option because the water was ready there. I had a rocking chair, all the things set up as a beautiful birthing center was. And she was like, if you're in a lot of pain, let's get you in the water. She says, you're ready for the water then. Because I was walking around, I had the rocking chair,
Mm.
I had all these things, but she saw my level of pain. She says, you're ready for the water. That's going to help you.
It makes all the difference to have a provider that is attentive and tuned into you and really giving you that individualized care of like, all right, this is what your body needs in this moment in time. Let's do that.
Right. Because I wouldn't have known I needed the water. I didn't know you're in the water, but she was like, your body needs this. It's going to help you relax. Because my body will tend to tense up. And I know that for previous pregnancies and births that I'll tense up. And that water was the most calming thing for my body. It was very releasing.
That's amazing. I love water in labor. Not only water births, but just hydrotherapy, even if you can't birth in the water or you choose not to. Hydrotherapy in water is just amazing.
Mhm.
Was this postpartum any different than your previous postpartums?
In the sense that I was able to, I actually had a harder postpartum in this one than I had in
Mm.
the previous ones. I had post-eclampsia.
Oh,
I
wow.
and which is interesting because I'd never had that at all for any of my babies. And so I did not know what I was navigating or what I was dealing with until I was like, and luckily I went to my doctor and they're like, yeah, you're dealing with this. Thankfully you came and they helped me with that with blood pressure and navigating my blood pressure. But again, I think it was something that I've never had any issues postpartum. And so this was the first time that I had anything post-eclampsia in my body with the swelling and things like that and pain and things. So I'm very attuned to my body and when it's different, when it's changing, when something's not normal or not the way it should be. And so for me, I just knew something was different, something was off. And so
Yeah.
I went back and then they helped me with that.
Yeah. Did you have to be readmitted for that postpartum preeclampsia?
They wanted to, again, I did not want to, so they gave me all the right things to do. I had to check my blood pressure all the time,
Mhm.
certain times of day, certain things that I would eat. I drank a lot of water and tons of water. So they helped me and gave me all the right natural things that I could do to help that, to help me with that process.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And then I think my last question before we wrap up is, do you find that your bond is different with this baby? I'm a firm believer that the way babies are born impacts some of their bond, not only with mom, but also like with the rest of the world. And I believe it impacts their sensory system and kind of their personality. I'm fairly woo-woo like that.
Yeah.
Do you notice anything like that?
Oh, 100%. This boy, we call him, he is he's full of life. And part of
Gosh.
the thing that I didn't tell you before is that this pregnancy, it was a VBAC, but I also, he had kicked so much. He's very active in my womb. He had kicked so much that he tore a muscle.
Oh my gosh.
He had torn a muscle and they wanted to do another cesarean. They were like, because I couldn't move, the pain was, I literally slept like in a recliner for the last weeks because the muscle was so torn because of the way he kicked. And so I loved not only the birth, but nursing. It was such a great experience and so close. And I nursed him until he was like 3 weeks before his 4th birthday. Just like very close, very sweet, full of life, very healthy little one.
That makes so much sense. Oh my goodness, I love this so much. All right, Jess, throughout your story, you can just see how much mindset means to you and how positive you are and how much you believe in the power of our minds and our brains. You do coaching for women. Tell us a little bit about that. It's a lot about mindset coaching and healing coaching. Who do you work with and what kind of services do you provide?
Yeah, I work with women that are looking to navigate and limiting beliefs, any kind of mindset limiting beliefs that they have, especially navigating from one season to the next or breakthrough from one area of their life to the next. For me, also like a lot of emotional healing and trauma and things like that, because we don't realize that the thoughts that we carry, they determine our actions and our beliefs and the way we encounter and deal with things in the world. And our minds are very powerful. And so the more we focus and have those limiting thoughts, they really keep us from getting to that next thing, to that next stage, or to that breakthrough that we so desperately want. But it's a lot of times it's processing and it's actually taking captive those thoughts. I'm a board certified behavior analyst, so I help people create a lot of systems and behaviors. And so the coaching just came natural to bring in my training as a behavior analyst with learning how to create systems in your life that'll help you, just because most moms tend to respond to life. Women, we tend to respond to demands and things like that. And instead of responding, it's like, how can I best use my time? How can I best use kind of the things that I want to navigate and create systems so that I can get to that next stage?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, amazing. Okay, and where can people find you if they want to work with you?
Yes, jessjcoaching.com.
Amazing. All right, you guys, we will put that in the show notes for you. Jess, thank you so much for sharing your amazing stories. Before I let you go, what years were you having babies and what time frame was this?
Girl, it's years of so much. So I have my oldest daughter is 30 and my youngest son is 9, gonna be 10. So he was my water birth, my last one. And so he was born in 2014. That was my water birth. And I have championed water birth after that to many of my friends that have had them afterwards. And so I have quite a few friends that have done water births because they just love them and they're just so amazing.
I love that. Oh my gosh. You guys, you heard it here. Water birth is the way to go. It really can be such a pivotal decision in your birth. Finding the right provider is key. Finding the place and the location you're going to have your baby that supports water birth is also really important. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I truly do value this community and I love hanging out with you. You deserve to have a birth that you love with a provider that values your autonomy and respects informed consent. It's an honor to be your go-to gal when it comes to preparing for your baby. If you found today's episode helpful, share it with a friend. Share it with someone who could use evidence-based information to help them have an informed and confident birth. I'd love to hear what you have to say and read your sweet words. By leaving us a review, you are helping other expectant mamas and their families find the podcast so that we can reduce birth trauma and improve maternity care in the U.S. one birth at a time. If you're interested in joining the Birth Lounge, go to thebirthlounge.com. If you want to connect with me on socials, you can find me at Tranquility by HeHe on all platforms. Until next time, stay educated, stay supported, stay confident. Bye.